We do it every Monday, and that is be joined by our favorite and Niners Nightly host, Larry Krueger. He is on the UMA guest line, and he's here to talk about another loss. You know, Krug, it's been a couple months now doing the show, and I think we've gotten one victory Monday together. How are you?
It's been that. It was that kind of a day.
Before.
Yeah, I mean, wow. This team was predicted to win the Super Bowl, and they lose 7 of their final 8 games, and it was a rough year. It was a rough year any way you slice it. They looked it was a weird vibe in camp, and I don't know if it was fatigue or what, but you know, this team had a shot. They were 4-4 going into the bye week. They were getting Christian McCaffrey back coming out of the bye week, and then everything just fell apart. He only played 3 games. The defense stopped taking the ball away, and they just limped home in very unimpressive fashion. And now they got to pick up the pieces and figure out a way to vault themselves back into the Super Bowl conversation with about a half dozen teams that are now in it.
All right, so we came in with Jake's missed kick. Let's get right to it with the coaching staff. Nick Sorensen. Did you asked him last week in his Thursday presser? He's a candidate. I mean, everybody's being interviewed for the New York Jets job, including Brian Griese, the Niner quarterback coach. Is he on the radar? You asked him about the Jets job, but I do want to ask him more broad strokes because Nick has been a special teams coordinator in his career before with the Jacksonville Jaguars when Urban Meyer was there. There may be a reassignment there. You know, if you wanted to make a change, a defensive coordinator, he could slide over and run special teams, and which would get into, what happens with Brian Schneider. But is Sorensen on the radar in Florham Park with the Jets?
Well, he was listed, Greg, as one of the, Jimmy Shapiro sends me the odds. And about 10 days ago, he sent me some odds on the individual coaching jobs. And I wanted to see if there were any 49er people mentioned on any of these lists. And sure enough, Sorensen was connected to the Jets. Now, he was 50-1. And when I asked him about it, he said he had no knowledge and have had no dialogue. But, Nick Sorensen is a good football coach. I know that's probably not something Niner fans want to hear this morning, but I'm always about the truth. And the truth is that Nick Sorensen is a good football coach. Their backslide this year has much, much more to do with personnel backslides in their front 7 than Nick and his struggles. But I also, while I say that, there also was not a lot of creativity when they weren't getting pressure, and they didn't get a sack in 4 of the last 6 games. You didn't see a really creative pressure package. Now, Tim Ryan told you about a month ago on the Football Hour that if you don't blitz a lot, you're typically not very good at it. And there's some truth in that. I just don't know if it's really an excuse.
So, Larry, I want to ask about the Juwan Jennings ejection because that was a focus of the first half hour on the show today. As I tell everyone that you're listening to KNBR and KNBR FM San Francisco, the sports leader, a Cumulus Media station, I personally love the Juwan Jennings mentality. I tweeted out yesterday that he blocks like an absolute psycho. I mean it in the most complimentary way. But another discussion point that was going around was Jennings kind of laughing and talking to the crowd and doing a little Draymond Green-esque theatrics after the ejection. And there was a discussion of, is this a lack of discipline issue? I just want to get your take on that with the Juwan Jennings back-to-back personal fouls.
I don't think it's a lack of discipline at all. I don't understand why he was ejected from that game at all. I mean, he did his job. He blocked into the whistle. The guy got up and was so disgusted that he started throwing blows. JJ never threw any blows. The first one was Starling Marte. The second one wasn't Starling Thomas. Starling Marte is a Mets outfielder.
Wow.
But the second one was...
You went to Marte Parte on me. Wow.
I was all over my Starlings there. But then the second one wasn't even Starling. It was another guy. So Starling gets just
Sean
a free...
Murphy Bunning, the one that intercepted.
Yeah, Sean Murphy Bunning gets
He's
run, but Starling doesn't get run. I mean, I didn't understand that. I mean, if JJ had gotten up and thrown blows, that's one thing. But I mean, when you block somebody so severely that it causes them to want to throw hands on you, are you also then susceptible to an ejection? I didn't realize that.
So what's the coaching point? I mean, we invited Mike Pereira on. Should he have been kicked out? Because they were back-to-back personal fouls, but they never announced the first one goes towards a possible ejection, like a violent hit over the middle or something, kind of like targeting. They didn't announce that. I mean, you get kicked out for back-to-back personal fouls. He's just kind of doing his job. So we'll talk to Mike about how the league legislates it. But if you're Leonard Hankerson and Kyle, what's the coaching point? Just do it again? But don't get run. How do you avoid it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the coaching point is, Greg. I mean, don't play with intensity. Don't play hard. I mean, they love JJ, and they love everything he stands for, and I do as well. It's a violent game. This guy's playing for keeps. He's real. He'll go out there and he'll fight you. And to me, Greg's question was, is it an indication of a lack of discipline? To me, that is not a negative culture thing. That's a positive culture thing. Like when I saw JJ, just the fact that Juwan Jennings in week 18, game 17, end of the year, you're going nowhere. And this guy's willing to put it all on the line and fight and claw, and he'd rather fight his guy than go for 1,000 yards. I mean, it's like, you know what? To me, if I could clone the Greenlaws and the Jennings of the world, I would. And I think the team would be a dynasty if you had a team made up of guys just made up like of those type of personalities.
Yeah, no, and I largely agree with you, Krug, in that I love Juwan Jennings' mentality. I think that he represents what a 49er is in a lot of ways, but I also just want to see it from the other side as well and know that if this was a game with playoff implications on the line and a Juwan Jennings got ejected in the first half, we might be having a different discussion there. But let's move over to something a little bit more positive.
And not to interrupt, but that might be the question for Pereira. If this game had not been a week 18, these teams aren't going to the playoffs, would they have taken JJ off the field? Because that would have been egregious if that had been like, if you win, you go to the playoffs, and you lose, you go home.
But the game was meaningful. He was 25 yards away from 1,000 on the year. The game had great meaning to Juwan yesterday.
Yeah, to him. But I mean, I wonder if the officials were aware of that, or if that even would matter. I'd love to hear his perspective on that whole play, because to me that seems counterintuitive to take him off the field.
So, Larry, let's move to something that is a little bit more positive with the end of the 49ers season, and that's Ricky Pearsall having back-to-back really strong showings. Yesterday goes 6 catches, 69 yards, don't insert the drop, and a touchdown after a career high in yards the last week. I mean, considering the slow start to the offseason he had with the injuries and then, of course, the shooting and not really getting his real reps until the halfway point of the season, do you think something like this holds a lot of weight to have Ricky Pearsall really be blossoming here in the final weeks, even when they're out of playoff contention?
No, it's great to see. I mean, especially since Debo is a question mark, Ayuk's a question mark. Your receiving core very much is a question mark going into next year because of the health and the contract status of Debo and who's going to be on the team, who's not, who's going to be able to play, who's not. They needed Pearsall to build another game of momentum. I'll say this: I'm a strict believer that you could almost never talk to the players, and you could learn enough from watching the film to tell you almost everything you need to know. But I will say this: from getting a chance to go in the locker room and getting a chance to talk to Ricky, look him in the eye, see exactly the way he answers the questions that I throw towards him, he is made of the right stuff. I mean, this guy, when Leonard Hankerson sounded him out, he was unaffected by that. He can turn that into a positive. He's very, very, very determined. He's very, very serious about his career. He's holds himself to incredibly high standards. I think Pearsall, with an offseason of reps with Purdy, I think that he's going to get to that point where Purdy to Pearsall on 3rd and 5, you can know it's coming, and you still won't be able to stop it. I think they're going to get on the same page and be able to work so hand in glove together that they become a real force.
3rd and Ricky.
He is very confident. He is the swaggiest white guy ever, as Diameter Lenore said. He is Slick Rick with drip. I sat down with him for about 20 minutes the other day, and we have talked before, but I'm blown away. He just has a bounce. The way he runs routes is the way he walks around life. The question I have for him, and a little bit Jacob Cowing as well, because you've been talking about getting Cowing on the field a lot, and Juwan Jennings' ejection didn't impact his playing time. It was Debo not being able to play. With the wrist injury, it was, Chris Conley played more at X when Jennings was out of the game. But the slight of build for both of these guys, and Ricky's taller, he's 6'1", but he's listed at 189. And we talk about Jennings and the no block, no rock. He's got to get a little bit stronger. Now it's hard. The off-season, the shoulder, the hamstring, he got shot. But he needs to be in an NFL weight room and live there. For Jacob Cowing, wow. Deshaun Jackson all over again. He weighs 168 pounds. I know the Jet. You love his ability, but I remember when John Gruden had him, and he asked you ever go in the weight room? And I think I was locked out of the weight room at Kale for G-Jax. Now he had a long career, but in the way the game is played today with Kyle's offense, how does Jacob Cowing get on the field at 168 pounds consistently?
Well, he doesn't. I mean, which is why, Tim Ryan made the point to you guys yesterday in the pregame. I think I was listening, and he's totally right on. He's like, this guy's got to get rocked up. He's got to get in the weight room, and he's got to get his body close to 190. This is pro football. I mean, there are teams. I know personnel guys. Ron Wolf was one of them. I remember Bill Urbanek introduced me to Ron Wolf one time, and Ron Wolf came out and said that he would never take a DB that wasn't 180 pounds and wasn't over 5'10". He just had a belief that if you were 5'9" and under 180, that you really couldn't stand up to the rigors of an NFL season. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think there's a lot of personnel guys that believe that. And I think Cowing and Pearsall will both be, everybody talks about 40 times and all kinds of different measurables with receivers. The most important factors on the perimeter, I think, whether you're talking about a corner or a receiver, it's strength. It's like these guys are really, really strong, and Cowing is not really strong. He has a hard time staying on his feet. Now, it's improved a little bit as the year went on, but he needs an overall strengthening of his legs, of his upper body. He needs to put on 10 to 12 pounds of good, lean muscle and come back next year ready to roll. And Pearsall would benefit from that as well. Not quite as much weight, but he definitely could put on 5 or 6 pounds of good muscle.
A few more minutes here with Larry Krueger, and we haven't really gotten into NFL at large yet. It's been very Niners-centric here, the first hour 10, but I do want to revisit our discussion from last week when we talked about the Detroit Lions, and you said you wouldn't pick them to win the NFC. Last night, that defense in particular, the injury-ravaged defense, made a big statement against the Minnesota Vikings. And does something like that, and now knowing that they for sure have home field and the road to the Super Bowl goes through Detroit in the NFC, does that change your opinion on the Detroit Lions to win the NFC?
Well, I mean, I'm so impressed with Aaron Glenn. I mean, Aaron Glenn was a great player at A&M. He was a great player with the Jets. But, man, he is evolving and emerging as just a phenomenal defensive coach. They had a totally different plan for the Niners than they had for the Vikings. They threw tons of blitz at Sam Darnold. They only sacked him twice, but they bothered him. He was 18 of 41 for 166 yards, and they did a nice job of defending Jefferson. They targeted him 9 times. He only caught 3 of the 9 balls. So I thought the defensive effort was incredible. And when you factor in there's no Aiden Hutchinson, that's amazing. I still think that, that Detroit, if Detroit had Hutchinson, if Detroit was a little healthier, I think there would be no doubter. But, I like the way Philadelphia looks right now. I love the way Philadelphia's offensive line is laying into people. They got a great back. They've got weapons. They've got a defense. They've got Fangio. I like the Eagles. To me, it's... Yeah, if you said it was going to be Kansas City and Detroit, I wouldn't fight you, but I think it's going to be Buffalo and Philly.
Well, Philly is Green Bay, and that's a rematch of the first week of the year, that Friday night game in Brazil, when Jordan Love got hurt in that game. He got hurt again yesterday. Jair Alexander's done for the knee, and they lost Christian Watson, so we shall see. I was blown away, and after the game yesterday, I watched the entire game between the Lions and Vikings flying home, and I was shocked that Minnesota just could not score on that defense. It's an entirely different defense that we saw on Monday Night Football at Levi's. Anzalone coming back did help, but they were 0 for 4 in the red zone. They got down there, and Sam was just confused, and he was locked on Jefferson too much. Addison was open, and formationally he was open, and Sam just wouldn't go that way. So my question now is, a week from the night, the Vikings, Kevin O'Connell was on Sean McVay's staff. They go to play the L.A. Rams, and the way the Rams defend when they play their guys with their front. Who do you like a week from the night? Vikings at the Rams and a wild card at SoFi, Larry.
Well, I mean, it's a dangerous spot because the Rams have, Super Bowl experience, a Super Bowl winning quarterback, a Super Bowl winning head coach, and no pressure at all, and home field. So, I mean, there's a lot going on there in the Rams' favor, but I'll take the Vikings. I like the Vikings. I think the Vikings are an incredibly well-coached football team on both sides of the ball. I think they're really well coached. I think they're really a rock-solid football team. To me, the great move that nobody talks about that the Vikings made in the offseason was getting Blake Cashman out of Houston, because Blake Cashman has just been monster. I think in the Niner game in week 2, he had like 13 tackles and a sack, he was incredible. And he has been absolutely incredible for them. So I like the Vikings, even though it's a road game. I think the Rams season this is still a transition year for them. They rested everybody, but Stafford has been gassed the whole second half of the year. So I like Darnold and Minnesota to go on the road and win there.
Larry, before we let you go, what do you got coming up at 6 p.m. tonight for Niners Nightly?
We're going to take phone calls tonight, and I've gone over the film one time. I'm going to watch it again this afternoon, and we're just going to go through piece by piece and kind of look at start of the off-season plan. It starts tonight, but we're going to let people have their say at 808 KNBR. No guests tonight. We'll go strictly with your phone calls and let people have their say and see. I'll say this, after watching Detroit, Minnesota last night, what Brock Purdy did against Detroit suddenly looks better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What'd you think of Dobbs yesterday? I don't think he'll get a starter job, but I think what he's got to find is a way to be a backup and not a 3. Do you think he's good enough to be a backup in the NFL? What did you think of Dobbs yesterday?
Well, what I loved is that, this guy, people forget. I mean, it takes a lot of football quarterback play is so much about rhythm. This guy has no rhythm. He hasn't played forever. And to be able to step in where you haven't played, you got bypassed for Allen in the Green Bay game. I thought that was probably could have gone either way. Kyle, I think Kyle kind of likes Allen and Dobbs the same, but Allen was been in the offense longer. He gave him that start. I thought Dobbs looked really good. I mean, now 3 turnovers are 3 turnovers, but at no point did he look harassed, harangued. I thought he was smart with the football. He took what the defense gave him. In some ways, I thought he looked better than Brock as far as he was willing to take the underneath route where Brock's a little bit more aggressive. But I thought Dobbs played well. I thought Taylor played well. I thought the Niner offensive line, which, a lot of new faces there. Pleasant, I thought. Austin Pleasant, I thought looked really good. I thought it was a solid. Fred Warner was out there on guts alone. That was hard to watch. But Renardo Green made some amazing plays. So I thought there were some positives for sure in that game, even though they lost by 23.
Thanks for coming by as always, Larry. Not sure when we'll talk next, but I'm sure it won't be too long. And I appreciate seeing you in the press box a couple of weeks ago. Appreciate listening to Niners Nightly, as you all should do tonight at 6 o'clock.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, fellas. Have a good day.